Hey friends, I'm your San Francisco referral partner, Shawn Kunkler. On today's episode, I sit down with Hyleri Katzenberg, who is a practicing realtor out of Connecticut and Florida, as well as the podcast host of Keeping It Real with Mark and Hill. Today, we talk about the increasing need for relationships with the rise of AI, the wisdom that comes from overcoming adversity and making mistakes, as well as the importance of being your authentic self to attract your ideal client. Well, Hyleri, thanks for joining. I appreciate your time. The way that I always kick this off, just to give the listener some context, in a sentence or two, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? Goodness gracious. Define myself in a few sentences. I am a mother. I am a wife. I am a woman, my own person. I'm a business owner. I am a realtor, which, as I just took my continuing education in Florida, because I'm in two states right now, it means a lot to have that designation, which we can go into later. And I'm a team leader. I'm a mentor. So I think in a nutshell, I'm also a grandmother.
Oh my
So
goodness.
that's exciting. Yeah.
That's amazing. CLO, my partner, she's dying to be a grandmother, but our kids are still in their teens, so we have a ways to go.
Being a grandmother is absolutely the best gig ever. They're
You can give them
so
back.
adorable. Yes. Although I don't really like to give them back, but I can tell you right now, I am suffering because my almost 2-year-old granddaughter was here and she started her terrible twos pretty early. So I was trying to get her to sleep in my bed and she was tossing and turning and tossing and turning and she didn't want to go to sleep and she started rolling off the other side. And I literally leapt over her, landed on the ground, caught her. So I feel pretty heroic about that and landed very badly on my knee. So I had to have knee surgery last Friday.
Oh my
And then when
goodness.
one thing goes, the other thing goes. So I threw my back out. So it's been, that's why I think people that are grandparent age can't reproduce anymore because you couldn't physically do it 24/7.
And you can't, you just can't keep up with a 2-year-old at all.
No,
So
definitely
talk to me
not. But
building a business in a area is extremely difficult, let alone building it in 2 areas. And you mentioned Ohio. So I guess my first question, the first part of this convoluted question is, where do you focus your primary energy? And then where's your secondary market? And then I will also preface this question with, I'm very familiar with the East Coast. As I mentioned, I grew up there. My dad did the same route that you just talked about, lived his whole life in Bristol, Connecticut, though he was born in Indiana, and then migrated to Florida probably about a decade and a half ago.
so your father and I sort of had the same kind of route because I grew up in Ohio, in Cleveland, and actually got my real estate license there when I was 18. My mother had a brokerage. She was an attorney. She had a brokerage in Cleveland. And I was going to UCLA. So I was, home for the summers. And one afternoon, I was probably, 17 and a half, and I was about to leave for college. And I'm looking at the clock, working at the mall. And it was a sunny day and nobody came in and we had quotas that we had to sell. And I thought, oh my God, I must be close to leaving. And I looked at the clock and it was like 20 minutes had gone by. And anytime a lone straggler walked in, like everybody would swoop over to them because they were trying to make a quota and nobody was at the mall. And I thought, I absolutely cannot do this. I can't. I'm gonna go crazy. So I faked sick and I left. And I called in and said, I have mono and I can't come back. And I looked at what my mother's agents were doing for her brokerage. And I thought, they make their own hours. What a great thing. On beautiful sunny days, they can go sit at the pool and say, I'm working with another client. It just seemed like, the perfect kind of gig. So I decided I'm going to get my real estate license. And I did. Took the test, passed the test, thought I was, pretty cool because I'm 18 and I passed this test. And didn't realize that at 18 years old, it was a little hard to gain the trust and confidence of people that were about to, sell or acquire the biggest asset that they are, going to own or disperse with. So I had some thinking outside the box to do and figure out how I was going to gain confidence, because not only was I 18 and wet behind the ears, but I was leaving in a few weeks to go to California for college, and I was not permanent there. So I guess this is an example of necessity being the mother of invention. I saw a property that was off a very, very busy street, and I thought, I wonder, it had sat on the market forever, and I thought, I wonder if there's a way to get this sold. And I thought that would be my low-hanging fruit, because they'd been on the market for so long that they might just try something. So this was a while ago, back in the day. Things are not quite as simplistic now, but I knocked on their door. They thought I had a lot of chutzpah, a lot of moxie. I said, my mom owns the company. I have an idea. Will you give me a shot? I'm going back to college in 5 weeks. And they thought it was cute. And I thought, what the heck? And they signed a listing agreement for 5 weeks. I came back to them with 4 forms from town hall. They signed the forms. We got it quickly rezoned commercial. And I ended up selling this property to Genie garage door openers for well over asking price in a very short time. And my mom put a little blurb in the local paper about that. And that kind of, opened some doors for me to sell and gain confidence from my friends' parents to, work with me and get referrals. And so that was kind of, my entree into real estate as a young, professional. And I do really think that it defined the way I looked at real estate, because constantly, technologies are changing, and marketing is changing, and now artificial intelligence is a whole new world, and ChatGPT. And I was born in a day and age where, a mouse was something you put in a cage and you fed cheese to, and now it's already obsolete. So in the computer world. So how do I straddle getting back to, that was a whole long conversation about how I got started, but how I straddle now 2 markets. My primary market is Connecticut. I have a team here. I raised my children here in Connecticut. My husband, who's now my recent real estate partner, and he was going to be on the show today, but unfortunately he's running around filling in for, my bad back and knee surgery. So he's out and about meeting with clients, but he lived in Florida. He lived in Palm Beach for many, many, many years. And he has a restaurant now on Las Olas in Fort Lauderdale. And so we bought a place, actually during the pandemic, we bought a place on Singer Island in the Palm Beach area. Before that, we'd been renting in Fort Lauderdale. And I would go down there because he had business down there. And there's something called mutual recognition between Florida and Connecticut, which meant I only had to take the state portion of the test in Florida to get licensed.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I kind of felt like it was a whole different breed of agents in the areas that I was living and the deals that I had done for myself down there. And I thought, I brought a certain awareness and knowledge to the practice that I thought there was sort of a black hole in the market down there. I made some deals for myself that I never should have been able to make. And so I got my license down there, and we were subletting a beautiful condo on the beach in Fort Lauderdale. And our landlord decided they wanted to sell. And I said, look, I just got my license. I made a deal on this that I never should have made. And I think I can, you should list it with me. I think I can, do you proud. So he gave me a shot again, and it was my staging in there and my furniture. And I sold it for the highest amount per square foot that anyone in that building on that line had ever sold it for. And from there, the '09 line, the same line, was right above me. And that condo had been on the market for quite some time. The listing had just expired. I sent my husband up to knock on the door and talk to the woman. And she said, we really haven't had many showings. And he said, well, my wife is a dynamo. You got to give it a shot. She just sold our unit. And so she said, okay. And mine went in a bidding war, and I sold it in a week to the people that lost the bidding war on my condo.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that was kind of what launched me in Florida. And then when we bought our condo up on Singer Island, I saw it come on, and I knew the agent had underpriced it. And it was during the pandemic, and I jumped on it. It was penthouse. I didn't even see it. My slogan during the pandemic was, if you can pick your spouse online, you can pick your house online. And that's exactly what I did. I saw it online, I picked it, and we were under contract in 1 hour. And then he got 4 better offers, which I knew he would, and he kept trying to get out of it, but we were under contract, so we couldn't.
Nice.
I gutted it. So, we that is my secondary market. We have a lot of people that are selling their places in Connecticut, in Ohio, where I grew up. My husband grew up in Philadelphia, New York City, those markets, and they're moving down to Florida. So it is a good feeder market, that my primary market to my secondary market. It is a juggle, and we're still sort of figuring it out, because you can't be in 2 places at the same time. So it's been great, but it's been we're still sort of figuring out the Florida piece of it more and more as we make sales down there and are growing our team down there.
I was just going to ask you that. Do you have a support team either in Florida or in the Connecticut hub?
So that's a very good question, Shawn. I have a team of 8 people in Connecticut. Unfortunately, my assistant is going back to college in a couple of weeks, so we're going to have to figure that one out. But I do have a good support team in Connecticut. In Florida, because it wasn't our primary market, I joined another team. I was offered when I came over to Compass, and I was only the second agent that came over to Compass in Westport. So I was one of the Westport founding agents for Compass. I was offered sort of a better deal in Florida if I moved Connecticut also at that time and moved to Compass. And so I joined a team in Fort Lauderdale, because that's where we were at the time renting, and that's where my husband's business is. And now we're up in the Palm Beach area. So we're still on that team. That's sort of where we put our license, and I love those guys, but we're sort of figuring out, a new approach, because we don't have a lot of support. It's easy now. We jump on a plane from Westchester White Plains Airport, and we're in Palm Beach Airport very quickly. So for right now, my husband or I'll jump down and, work with the client. But it's been harder to list properties, quite honestly, down there, because we're not as boots on the ground, and we're figuring that piece of it out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even with my business, we focus specifically in San Francisco, and then I have a few clients who look in the South, North, and East Bay, but granted, it's definitely not as far apart as Connecticut to Florida, but it does create some logistical challenges because of how much time it takes. Though I don't have to hop on a plane, it could take an hour and a half to get to the other side of the bay.
Did you grow up in San Francisco area?
I was born in Bristol, Connecticut, and then kind of hovered around the Southington area. Bristol's where ESPN is from. Everybody knows that one.
Yes, of course.
And then in my early 20s, that's when I relocated to California, and then have been here primarily since.
Always in the northern region?
Always in the northern. Yeah. It's incredible. It feels like multiple states because of how just vastly different it is.
Completely different. I went to USC and then UCLA, and we used to go up for all the games, for Berkeley and for, Stanford games and everything. And it just felt, even though you were in the same state, it definitely felt like you were in a vastly different world, and the culture there and the restaurants and wine country. I mean, what a rich part of the country you're in.
Couldn't agree more. I absolutely love it here. And then from the real estate perspective, in San Francisco, we have a specific contract for San Francisco, And then there's one that's all of California. And then within that, there's certain compliancy for certain counties. So it's like doing business in a different state sometimes.
We kind of have that here a little bit too, because I sell in Greenwich, Connecticut, which has its own MLS and its own, board of realtors, and Darien has its own, and New Canaan has its own, and then Smart MLS, and things are done differently, and that's the trick. I mean, when you've got a team that's selling in multiple places, as it sounds like you are. I mean, we're paying a lot of dues for different boards, and you've got to know, I mean, in Greenwich, when you write an offer up, you're doing a term sheet, and you end up going straight to contract, and you do your inspections in between. In Westport, Fairfield, Norwalk, Weston, some of the other towns we serve, we do something called a binder, which is like a promise ring, and you do actually sign an agreement. You put down 1%, you do your contingencies. So it's very different, just really 20 minutes apart from each other. And then of course, Florida, we use attorneys here for all closings. Florida, you go straight to contract. The agent writes the contract. So it's tricky in the beginning to learn all the different, especially when you're straddling markets, for sure.
100%. As well here, we don't use attorneys unless things are going sideways. So it's the agents who are going over everything. And that's why back end, you need really good management and really good attorneys that are guiding us as to write this, don't write this, make sure you add this piece in. And it's a little stressful, I have to say.
Shawn, how long have you been at Compass, and what brought you over to Compass?
Originally, there was a brokerage in San Francisco. It was a boutique brokerage called Paragon. And I originally went with them specifically because I wanted to be in the luxury sector and I wanted to sell on the north side of the city. And so I did my homework and figured out logistically which brokerages was doing, who was that brokerage, like who had that like powerful stance. So I went with Paragon. And then when Compass got backed by SoftBank and they had copious amounts of money, they started a brokerage in San Francisco and then wound up recruiting a bunch of the top agents. And then they started going after other brokerages. So I was part of the first brokerage acquisition is how I made my way to Compass. And then that acquisition, we just hit the 5-year mark on that.
Well, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
I will be 4 years in the end of 2018. So I guess it'll be coming on 5 years. And yeah, I mean, it's nice when you can see the writing on the wall. When I was the second agent in Westport to jump over to Compass, no one had really even heard of Compass. But because of our presence in Florida and New York City and everything else, I saw what they were doing in other markets. And it was a leap of faith. I'd been with my last brokerage for 17 years when I jumped ship. It was a long time. And, there's such a learning curve, obviously, when you come over to Compass with all the technology. And, it comes really easy to people who grew up in a world of technology. But, when you're of a certain age, it's not second nature the same way. And it was a little bit, scary at first, but I don't know what I'd do without the Compass platform and technology now. It just I've been able to offer my clients so much more than I could before, and it's just made so many things easier. The learning curve is tough, but once you got it down, it really makes life a lot easier.
It's to your point earlier with your joke about the mouse, as when we were younger, the only mouse that we knew of it was either Tom and Jerry or it was one in a cage. It's speeding up as years go by. And what Compass did, I'm not trying to just fanboy them, but they kind of put everything together into one package. Whereas previously we had all the same things. It was just, we had to go to all these other places, which made for a rougher experience for the clients. The client didn't have that same continuity, which they do now have.
I certainly feel that Compass has made things easier. It's still the same model, though. I mean, it's all relationship. And I think if you're a transactional agent, you don't build a pipeline. I think it just makes it easier to keep in touch with your clients, to pump out stuff, to, feed your clients questions and things like that, so that you've got more time to focus on what really is at the heart of this business, which is relationships, trust, serving your clients. And that's never changed from way back when I started in the business in Ohio, and I was, we didn't have GPS, so we had to make maps for ourselves of where we were going to go. We didn't have cell phones if we were running late or changing appointments. And we had listing books that came out like every week, and you'd have to go through these books, and, things would change. And I mean, I can't even imagine half the realtors in this business started, having to contend with those things. I mean, what technology has done for this business is night and day. But still, even going back to those times, it was all relationship driven.
Completely. And that's what I feel is very unique about this industry is you talk to anybody, they know in San Francisco, there's over 5,000 realtors. Everybody knows 20 of them. You can throw a rock and hit one of them. It's not a challenge. And so how do you stand out? And to your point, it's relationship.
It's absolutely relationships. And to highlight that point, so when I got started with my license, 1999, 2000 in Connecticut, I had been in the corporate world working in New York City, and I was going through a second divorce, and I wanted to be closer to my children. I was raising my kids in Westport, Connecticut. Felt like I was kind of missing soccer games for work and some of those things, and I felt that they really needed me closer to home. And I thought, I know this gig, I did it in Ohio, I'm gonna go back into it in Connecticut, and it's hyper local and I can be close to my kids. So again, super, super competitive. And I had to figure out, again, think outside the box. And, I think that really to thrive at anything, it's taking a look inside at who you are and, building from that, not reinventing the wheel or reinventing yourself, but exploiting your talents and strengths. So I was going through a divorce, and this is before Realtor.com. It was before Zillow. It was before social media. And I had to figure out how I was going to take a bite out of the very competitive real estate market, as you just described, where you can throw a rock and it will skip off and hit 3 people that sell real estate.
It's true.
So I learned very quickly as I was on the dating apps going through a divorce that everybody that was getting divorced had to buy or sell a home. And that became my niche.
I love it.
I really catered to, in the very beginning, the divorce industry and people going through divorce. And then I started fixing my clients up. In fact, I still love to fix people up. I fixed 2 couples up this week that are hitting it off and going strong just this week. So, tuned into who I am and where my life is at and what's the most low hanging fruit. And then I was giving seminars on how to mate, date, and relate really great. So, that became my way I met people. Indirectly, I met my husband that way because I met a guy on Match.com and went out with him and became friendly with him. And I sold his house. I sold his ex-wife's house. Then I sold his new girlfriend's house. He introduced me to somebody who was buying a second home here from Palm Beach who knew my husband. I sold them a house here, and they introduced me to my husband, who I made get his license during the pandemic and be my partner because I was so busy. I needed all hands on deck. So that was how my Connecticut career came to fruition in real estate.
2 things you made me think of. So one is death, divorce, and babies. If you can tap into one of those markets, which clearly you did, like you will have a self-sustaining business. And there's a billion different ways to tap into that market. And it sounds like, you took a kind of a hard situation and what's the saying? You made lemonade out of lemons. And the other piece, which this is really subtle, and I don't know if anybody picked this up, but you just mentioned how you essentially play matchmaker with people you know. And in talking to you this time and previously in our other conversations, I love that you don't approach people as I'm selling them a property. And one of my early sales mentors, he said, stop selling people and start playing matchmaker. And if you understand what they're looking for, then you can guide them to that thing that you actually have for sale, and you made a match and they'll buy it. And you don't have to force them, push them.
1,000%. And, it's not like when you walk into a store and try on a shirt and somebody goes, oh God, that blue is so beautiful with your blue eyes. No one's buying a house because you talk them into it, or buying a, property, or, because you say you talk them into it. It's not sales. If you really are making a career out of this, then you're trying to match make, the best fit for, and your fiduciary is to your client in a way that you have to take care of them and make sure that, I don't want to see anyone be house poor. And, the craziness of this industry is that if you're not an expert and you don't know, you're not just going to win business because, your brother's buying a house. I mean, that's a transaction. That's not a pipeline. You have to look at the macro, and you have to take care of your clients, and then they're going to refer you. And that creates a pipeline. I look at myself and my team members as portals to a community. And, real estate is constantly changing in terms of, migration, but really at the root of it all is that most everybody that is buying or selling a home is going through some sort of life transition.
Specifically now with the mortgage rates increasing, the people who are locked into a really low rate, they don't have to sell unless they have to sell. And so if it's something they're just casually thinking about, they're going to back burner it until there's a trigger event.
And we're in that age range, my husband and I, where a lot of people are becoming empty nesters. And this is typically when, or they are empty nesters, or, and they don't need the big house, and they don't need, but, like you said, they're locked into this really low interest rate. And we try to look at where somebody's got equity in their home. And I just sold two sides of a home. I represented buyer and seller off market, where they were able to pull the cash out and buy something, with cash that was significantly less, but very comfortable for them. They didn't need to be in the school system that they were in anymore, which is part of why a lot of people are spending more money in one town or another based on the school system. And if you don't need to pay for that because your kids are out of that, then, you can afford to downsize into, maybe a more industrial community, or, and it's looking at that and how much equity. And artificial intelligence is definitely paying attention now with our Compass likely to sell, who's got equity in their house, how long they've been in their home, and, people that wouldn't need to get into a 7%, interest rate going forward. And by doing a good job for my buyers, I have to scout, properties for them that are not necessarily on the market, because the ones that are on the market, they're bidding wars, and it's tough. And, I have to try to create opportunities for them.
As our market changes, or our industry, I should say, changes with the rise of technology, and more specifically AI, the importance of having really incredibly strong relationships with our clients is going to be the thing that separates the agents who are top performers versus everybody else.
And also relationships with other agents. If you play well in the sandbox. And I love that one of the, most important, credos of Compass is collaboration without ego, because we have to work with other agents all the time. And if you look at them as competitors, there's enough business to go around. You don't need to go try to grab someone else's client. You need to be able to make a smooth transaction for everybody involved. And I love the collaboration that, Compass has offered, and all across the country. And I love this collaboration with you, and both of us learning about what we do and how to do it best. And we're always constantly learning.
That for me in my business, that was a massive, incredible shift when I stopped looking at colleagues as competitors that I'm going against and I'm fighting against. And I started viewing them as teachers, friends, peers, mentors. And then it changed boundaries where you're on a completely different coast and in from my home state. Inevitably, I have my family is still there, my family's friends, my friends, they're there. At some point, I need to rely on an agent of, hey, my sister's thinking about painting her house. Who do you recommend? They're actually now thinking about selling. Are you taking on clients? It's a very different conversation because we just basically pick up where we left off, but that's all based on relationship and getting to know each other and me trusting that your internal compass is pointed ethically in the right direction because these are my friends and my siblings who I want the best for them. I want an agent to step in and treat them the way that I would be treating them.
Absolutely. I mean, it flows back on you, and it's really important that you put them in the best hands if you're going to refer someone. And that goes for anybody. I mean, I'm constantly referring, and you, I'm sure, are as well, inspectors, lenders, and they rely on the fact that these people, that you've vetted them, and, that's really, really important. I can say that, going further on the whole divorce niche, I'm now a member of a group called the National Association of Divorce Professionals, which we're a network group, and they're in different states. You might have one in San Francisco, of professionals that cater to the divorce industry. So, real estate attorneys, financial planners, therapists, realtors, lenders, all the different concerns that and professions that cater to and serve the divorce industry. And it's been a great referral network. It's been great for everybody to support and help. People going through divorce are so disenfranchised, and so it's nice to have a place for them to go. And I learned that the hard way, having gone through 2 divorces myself. So, when I talk to people, and that's the one thing I think I would really want people to know, because I do think, all of us that are successful realtors, or at least most of us, have a strong presence on social media. And social media, you paint a picture to the world that shows your strengths. And I think the one thing it doesn't show, and my clients know about me, but I would like, the world to know, is that I don't preach from a loft. I've been there. I've been down in the mud. I have lived the hard lessons. I've been through 2 divorces. I've been through kidney cancer.
Oh my goodness.
I was a single mom. Been through financial hardships. And I've been there, and I've experienced these things for myself, which is what helps me, be a more empathetic and good person to represent and care. I really care about my clients. I've gotten them jobs when they've moved here. It's not just, okay, close the transaction. I mean, I had a call from a client not too long ago that had, a major issue in their job, and they're listing their house, afraid they're losing their job. And, it wasn't like, yay, I'm listing this house and selling this house. It's like, I care first and foremost. I want them to be okay. Thrilled for them, to cancel the listing and stay in their home. I don't like to get listings because I'm the recipient of somebody going through adversity in their life. Having been there, I feel those knots in my stomach for them that I felt at the time. It brings me back, and I know what they're going through. And so, I think that's really, really important, to bring your humanity to a relationship business.
And to your point, I lived through a divorce as well. And it was in my adult life, it was one of the absolute most challenging experiences I've ever been through. And it's, as your whole world is being shaken, I as I hear you, as you're sharing this and understand the value of having these other professionals around you that you actually trust, and they're guiding you through an experience, and they're not just pushing you through because they need the commission check or whatever their hidden agenda is, but you're actually around people who are getting your back in that time. I 100% can see and appreciate the value in that. And that is a very smart group to be a part of. And I that's, as agents, if we're too generic with our marketing and our outreach, we tend to get generic results. But when you drill down to figure out, who am I, what were my challenges, what's my group, there was an amazing manager, Anita, at the Paragon office, and she said in a meeting, and I'll never forget this, but she said, let your freak flag wave. Like, whoever you are, be it, and attract those people.
I agree. I mean, there's only one you, and there's no wrong way to do it. However you do you is what you is. And it's really gaining the confidence to be your full self. I had heard from a wise person once that every day you live, you're more who you are. And I really find that also as, getting older. I just turned 60. I am not afraid to say it. It was a big birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. It was in May. And, everybody's like, how do you feel turning the big 60? Oh my God. And I made myself a pledge when I was going through kidney cancer in 2008 that, I looked around and I didn't know my prognosis then. I didn't know, if this was going to kill me or not. And I got jealous of people that were so much older and got to have so many birthdays and so many more life experiences. And I thought, if I survive this, I'm going to look at every birthday very differently and say, how lucky am I that I got to turn 46, 47, 48. Every birthday that I have, I'm so grateful for. And, you become more who you are. I don't think that you can be wise when you're young. You can be smart, but I don't believe you can be wise. I think wisdom comes from learning from your own personal life experiences. And I think you can be very old and not be wise because you're not learning from your experiences. And, I think adversity gives you an opportunity, and it's up to you whether or not you're going to learn and grow from it and be better from it, or you're going to, repeat the same mistakes and, not be wise. And to be wise is a choice of paying attention and learning from it.
Yes, that's probably the most elegant way I've ever heard that put. And that's such a beautiful way to look at it. It's just, you have a different gratitude of the day instead of a regret. People tend to, if the birthday ends with a 0, they have a different pang in their stomach where you're like, I made it. This is amazing. I love it here.
60's the new 40 anyway. So there's that. Except for the knee and the back.
I'm approaching 50 quickly, and so I'm going to remember this conversation, and I'm going to savor that I made it to that point.
On your 50th birthday, Shawn, I want you to pinch yourself and say, I'm only a day older than I was yesterday when I wasn't 50 yet.
It's so true.
My husband is 12 years older than I am, and he can run circles around me. So, we do a podcast, a weekly podcast called Keeping It Real with Mark and Hill. And we're doing a lot of, aging and wellness and, Eastern kinds of philosophy. And my husband lived in China for a couple of years, and he drinks green tea like it's water. And he walks like 8 miles a day. I mean, he's insane. And he's run marathons. And everyone says they can't believe his age. He is just the youngest, almost 72-year-old that you've ever seen. And he's handsome and, still. So it's all in your mind and what you do with it and how you take care of yourself, and happiness goes a long way. I really do believe I got cancer because of some of the adversity in my life and how I internalized it, and stress and everything else, and managing stress and taking care of yourself. You can't put that on the back burner because you only have one you, so this is the body I got to live in.
Yeah. That's a whole different topic and conversation. And I agree. healthy mind and body is so incredibly important, especially with this industry or being an entrepreneur, because the second that contract closes, we're unemployed. And so we're constantly just running at full speed. And if we don't slow down and literally take that time back for ourselves, we do run into some mental health issues, some physical health issues, and then they just compound after that point. And then at the end of it, you can't be there for anybody else, your friends or family or your clients for that matter.
Right. You can't show up for anyone else unless, the old saying about if the plane is going down, you have to buckle your own seatbelt first. I mean, that's life. You take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. And, I think life is interesting in the way that, every day you wake up and it's another gift. You get to become more who you are and make choices. And, each morning you get to make the choice. Am I happy? Am I going to be productive? Am I going to pull the covers over my head today? Which I have days like that, it's hard to do because I have a lot of people that depend on me, but you need a support group. I mean, we were so busy last summer and I said, I need a vacation. And that's what my team is for. I wasn't good at delegating. And my husband and I, spur of the moment, and we went to Turkey and Greece and Croatia and Italy and, we Slovenia, and we took that time for ourselves, and it was a bit of a juggle, but, that is one thing. I mean, technology in one way, it just makes it so that somebody wants an answer immediately and everything else, but it also allows you to work from a beach in Florida. Or, while you're sightseeing in Croatia, it gives you also certain freedoms. You got to take the good with the bad. It's been a very interesting ride, this whole technology thing. I mean, this AI chat. Now, I have a question for you. Have you seen Oppenheimer and the Barbie movie yet? Notice I'm in my Barbie pink today.
I love it. I have not. My son did the Barbieheimer. So he saw both of them back to back.
Barbenheimer. Oh, I don't know how I could do that.
Him and his friends were all locked in, but I haven't done it. But I asked him, of the two, which one did you like more? And he was like, well, obviously they're very different. I was like, yeah, man, I know they were both different. And he said,
how old is your son?
16.
Okay.
He actually liked the Barbie movie better.
Well, it's definitely outperforming Oppenheimer at the box office, but I do think it's also because he's 16, because I definitely liked Oppenheimer a lot better. Although I will say, I think Barbie is, it touches on a lot of interesting political and social points, but it is kind of fluffy. And my husband was like, I took my team, we did a whole team thing and dressed in pink and did the pictures and, the women really liked it better than the guys did. So, I don't know. Go figure. But I did love Oppenheimer. It was just such an important historical film to see and so well done.
Yeah. I mean, that whole period in the US it's terrifying to think about, and it's terrifying to think what damage they've done that we're still living and dealing with today.
I mean, these times are incredibly scary for a whole lot of, different challenges that we're going through right now, but
they are. But I love that you took your team. That's a really fun way to, as we just talked about, you got to kind of step back for a minute, reset, recalibrate. And that's a relationship too, is just reconnect with your team and do different things, different perspectives, and have fun.
It's important.
This recording session has flown by. Thank you. This was incredibly fun getting to know you.
This has been an absolute pleasure. We have to have you come on our podcast as well, Shawn.
Anytime. I'm bummed that Mark didn't get to sit in today.
So am I. But you know what? You got the better half anyway. So I'm going to make sure he hears that.
Fair enough. We'll make sure we quote you and send that out.
Yeah. Well, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for having me on. And I look forward to collaborating with you.
Me as well. Thank you.